alone. The early explorers at first dismissed the natives' accounts of the Tuskies as superstition. Then they saw several of the minute creatures circling in the clear water of the spring, gliding just below the surface. They saw dappled clouds of Tuskies swimming at the edge of the meadow where the stream deepened before descending down the mountain. They saw them stretched on rocks, soaking in the sun. The creatures were too swift to catch with bare hands, so the men used sieves and fine woven nets, scooping up the Tuskies by the dozens. They dumped the tiny captives into bottles filled with river water, packed them in crates and carried them east to be loaded onto ships and sent back to England. Invariably, the Tuskies died either during the journey to the coast or on board the ships. The men hoped to bring home the strange carcasses, if nothing else, as proof of their existence. But the bodies floating belly up inside the bottles would disintegrate into a silt that within minutes became transparent. And then, of the 12 ships that transported the bottles, 2 went down in North Atlantic storms, 4 were sunk by Spanish frigates off the Azores, 4 others lost their cargo to fire in Southampton Harbor, and 1 sailed off course, disappearing into the frozen waters of the Arctic. Only a few bottles actually made it into the hands of scientists at the Royal Society, who tested the water with all the means available to them at the time and found no impurities beyond a slightly elevated level of phosphorus. And as for the handful of eyewitnesses who had returned to England alive, the reports by these men were all dismissed as hoaxes. The Tusky flows north from Pennsylvania through the southern tier in western New York and into Canton Lake. Its source is on the edge of a cornfield in the highlands of the Alleghenies, the spring where the Tuskies were said to have come out of the earth. After the natives were driven from the region and before the tractors made the high slopes accessible to farmers, the forest undergrowth grew so dense and the outflow so thick with swamp grass that the exact location of the spring was forgotten. Until the night in 1947, when a 16-year-old girl left her newborn infant on the kitchen table of her parents' home and ran away. Splish, splash, lua, lua. Where was she? Oh, buddy, weren't they in trouble now? If only she had a buddy. Or a blanket to keep her warm. Or soap. She'd give her little toe for a bar of Rexall's lavender-scented soap. And for such a sacrifice, she deserved a piece of Hershey's milk chocolate as well, along with a guarantee that she'd never again go through what she'd just been through. But with water, this good, fresh, pure spring water bubbling like happiness, she'd do all right. She didn't need nobody. Anybody, rather. She knew her she knew her grammar well enough to get by. The cock's crow came with dawn. She'd had Miss Crumbledorf for 3/4 of 5th grade until she went to work for the Jensens. Miss Crumbledorf, with her narrow shoulders and string blonde hair and freckled nose. She was perfect and devoted herself to teaching students everything they needed to know so that when the time came, they could decide how best to make use of their God-given talents. Was it because of Miss Crumbledorf that Sally made the irreversible decision to leave her newborn son for her family to find and run away from the world? If only the world weren't so darn big. Everywhere you go, there it is. And just when you think you've had enough, you find a quiet place where the clear, cold water comes bubbling out of the earth. That's nice. And look at all the wild strawberries peeking out from behind their leafy curtains, enough to fill 2 buckets. The brightening sky promising a healing warmth. A wood thrush piping its 3-note trill. If she weren't so all alone at this, the second beginning of her life, she'd have to consider herself blessed.